My girlfriend left me for a rich man after her family said I'd never be enough. Now she's back. But a sentence from me turned her world upside down. When I was 15, I started working at my Uncle Mike's auto shop. Not because he wanted to hire me. He actually tried to talk me out of it, saying I should focus on school, but I was tired of wearing hand-me-downs and seeing my mom exhausted all the time. Plus, I always had a thing for cars. I used to spend hours watching YouTube videos about engines and modifications, sketching designs in my beat-up notebooks during class. Uncle Mike's shop wasn't anything fancy, just a regular place that did decent work for decent people. But man, that shop was my Harvard. Every day after school, I'd head straight there to sweep floors, organize tools, whatever needed doing. The older mechanics started teaching me stuff when they saw I was actually interested. By 16, I could do an oil change with my eyes closed. By 17, I was helping with engine rebuilds. Here's where it gets interesting. One day, this dude rolls in with a clapped-out Mustang GT. Other shops had given up on it, saying it wasn't worth fixing, but I saw potential. I spent 2 weeks staying late after my regular hours, researching forums, trying different things. Finally, I got it running better than new. Word spread after that. If you had a performance car that needed serious work, Uncle Mike's was the place to go, and I was the kid to ask for. I graduated high school with decent grades thanks to Mom riding my ass about homework, but college wasn't really in the cards. I went to trade school instead and got all my certifications. That's where I met Sarah. Man, thinking back now, I should have seen the red flags from day one. She brought her BMW to the shop where I was doing my apprenticeship. Nothing special, just a 328i her daddy bought her for her 20th birthday. Yeah, I know. But she was different from the usual rich girls we got. She actually seemed interested when I explained what was wrong with her car, didn't act grossed out by my grease-stained hands, and even laughed at my dumb car jokes. We started dating a few weeks later. Looking back, I think she saw me as her rebellion against her stuck-up family. You know how rich girls sometimes date the bad boy to piss off their parents. Except I wasn't even a bad boy, just a working-class dude who was good with cars and had big dreams. Those first couple of years were actually pretty great. She'd bring me lunch at the shop and hang out while I worked on projects. I started doing side jobs, saving up every penny I could. I had this vision of opening my own place. Not just another repair shop, but a high-end custom garage. The kind of place where people bring their Ferraris and Lamborghinis for serious work. Sarah seemed supportive, always talking about how she believed in me. Her family, though, holy hell. Imagine every stereotype about old money snobs. Multiply it by 10 and you're getting close. Her dad, Mr. Big Shot real estate developer, would ask me condescending questions about my little car hobby at family dinners. Her mom would constantly bring up how her friend's son was doing so well at medical school or how her cousin's husband just made partner at his law firm. But I kept my cool and focused on my goals. By 24, I had a solid reputation in the Detroit car scene. I started getting some high-end clients through word of mouth and was even featured in a local car magazine for a custom restoration I did on a 1967 Shelby GT 500. Things were looking up. Sarah and I had been together for 4 years at this point. We talked about marriage, kids, the whole thing. I was saving up for a ring. Nothing fancy, but it was honest money I'd earned with my own 2 hands. I had this whole plan to propose once I secured the loan for my shop. Then everything went to hell. Every year, Sarah's family hosted this fancy charity gala for some Save the Whatever Foundation. Usually, I'd find an excuse to skip these things. Nothing's more uncomfortable than being surrounded by trust fund babies who think changing their own oil is quirky and adventurous. But this time, Sarah insisted, saying it was important to her family that I be there. Red flag number 1 that I completely missed. I busted my ass that week to finish up a client's Porsche GT3 early so I could make it. I even bought a new suit. Nothing fancy, but definitely a step up from my usual J.C. Penney specials. I spent 3 hours watching YouTube videos on how to tie a proper Windsor knot. Looking back, I probably tried too hard, but hey, I wanted to make Sarah proud. The gala was at this ridiculous mansion outside the city. We're talking fountain in the driveway, valet parking, awkward moment when I recognized one of the valet. The dude used to work at Uncle Mike's and enough crystal chandeliers to blind a small army. I felt out of place the second I walked in, but I was trying to play it cool. That's when James Morrison III made his grand entrance. This douchebag pulls up in a brand new Porsche GT3 RS, the exact model I'd been working on all week, except his was fresh off the showroom floor. Probably never even seen a speck of dust. He walks in wearing what I later found out was a $112,000 suit. Yeah, I looked it up after some fancy-ass watch that probably cost more than my yearly income. And that typical trust fund baby haircut that screams, "My daddy's lawyers have lawyers." Here's the real thing. Turns out his family owned Morrison Luxury Automobiles. This chain of high-end dealerships across 3 states, the same dealerships that would sometimes send us problem cars they couldn't fix. The irony was painful. Sarah's mom practically sprinted across the room to greet him. "James, darling, we didn't know you'd be here." Total lie. I found out later they'd specifically invited him. Next thing I know, they're steering Sarah towards him, making sure they're seated together at dinner. During dinner, I had to sit there and listen to this guy brag about his latest business ventures, all funded by daddy's money, of course. Just acquired a new dealership in Chicago, he says, swirling his 1,000 wine like he's in some fancy commercial. Planning to expand into the exotic car market. It's really about understanding the luxury consumer mindset. I almost choked on my weird-ass tiny portion of whatever French dish they were serving. This guy wouldn't know real car work if it bit him in his designer flat ass. But every time he opened his mouth, Sarah's parents were practically drooling. Her dad kept saying things like, "That's the kind of forward thinking the industry needs, and you really understand the business side of things." The whole time, I noticed Sarah getting quieter and quieter. Usually, she'd jump in, talk about some of the custom work I'd done, how I was planning to open my own shop. But that night, nothing. She just sat there nodding and laughing at James' terrible jokes about people who still buy American cars. That hurt more than any of the subtle digs about my background. After dinner, they had dancing. I'm not much of a dancer unless you count the victory dance I do after successfully rebuilding a transmission, but I was trying. Then James cuts in all smooth with his ballroom dancing skills. Probably learned at some fancy prep school. Sarah didn't even look back at me. The rest of the night was torture. I had to watch them dancing, talking, laughing. Her mom kept hovering around them, taking pictures, making comments about what a handsome couple they made. Meanwhile, I'm standing by the bar drowning my frustration in an overpriced drink that I couldn't really appreciate anyway. On the drive home, Sarah was different. Quiet. When I tried to joke about James being a walking stereotype, she didn't laugh like she usually would. Instead, she got defensive. "He's actually really smart about the industry," she said. "Maybe you could learn something about the business side from him." That's when I knew. Deep down, I think I knew right then that we were done. But like an idiot, I ignored it. I kept telling myself she was just impressed by the fancy party, that things would go back to normal once we were back in our regular routine. Over the next few weeks, Sarah started getting more involved with her family's social circle. Suddenly, she was too busy to hang out at the shop. Always had some charity event or social function to attend. And somehow James was always there, too. "Just a coincidence," she'd say. "Yeah, right." The final straw. I found out she'd been having business lunches with James to discuss investment opportunities for my future shop. Apparently, he was interested in backing local talent. Sure. Backing me right out of my relationship. It was a Tuesday when my life imploded. I remember because I had just finished a complex transmission rebuild on a client's Mercedes-AMG GT. I was feeling pretty good about myself. Had grease all over my hands, but a fat check in my pocket. The kind of day that usually meant a celebration beer with the guys at the shop. Then Sarah texts, "Can we talk? I'll come by your place after work." Anyone who's ever gotten that text knows exactly what it means, but stupid me. I actually thought maybe she wanted to apologize for being distant lately. I rushed home, took the fastest shower of my life, even cleaned up my small apartment above the shop. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Paid for with honest work and long hours. She shows up looking like she stepped out of a magazine. Designer everything, hair done perfectly, not a single thing out of place. Meanwhile, my hands still had motor oil under the nails that wouldn't come out no matter how hard I scrubbed. The contrast hit different that day. "I think we need to take a break," she starts. Classic opener, right? But then comes the real gut punch. I've been doing a lot of thinking about my future. I just sat there on my worn-out couch while she went through her obviously rehearsed speech. How she needs stability. How she's at a point in her life where she needs to think about her future seriously. How her family made her realize some things. Then the kicker, she actually had the nerve to say this. "James helped me understand what I really want in life. Someone established, someone who can provide the lifestyle I'm accustomed to." You know what's up? I didn't even get mad. Didn't yell or throw things. I just sat there feeling like someone had ripped my heart out through my throat. For years of memories flashing through my mind. All the late nights she spent at the shop with me. All the plans we made. All the time she said she believed in my dreams. "What about the shop?" I asked. "What about everything we planned?" She actually rolled her eyes. Rolled her eyes. Be realistic. Do you know how much capital it takes to compete with established luxury garages? James says. I cut her off there. James says, the guy who's never changed his own oil. That's who you're taking business advice from now. She got this look on her face like I was some kid who just didn't understand how the real world works. This is exactly what I'm talking about. You're so focused on the technical side, you don't understand the business reality. James has connections. He understands the luxury market. I stood up. Something in me just broke. Get out. What? Get the hell out of my apartment. Take your designer bags, your business reality, and your James, and get out. She looked shocked, probably expected me to beg, to promise I'd change, to grovel for another chance. Instead, I walked to the door and held it open. She left without another word. 2 days later, she's all over Instagram. Pictures of her and James at some rooftop restaurant. His arm around her waist, both of them looking like they're shooting a commercial for rich people problems. Caption, sometimes life leads you exactly where you're meant to be. The worst part, the comments. All her rich friends saying things like, OMG, finally you guys are perfect together. And this is what you deserve, girl. Like our entire relationship was just some embarrassing phase she went through. Then came the real storm. Remember that Mercedes I'd just finished working on? The owner calls the next day, says the transmission's acting up again. I was so messed up from the breakup. I must have missed something during reassembly. I had to eat the cost of fixing it. There went the fat check I was so proud of. More mistakes followed. I started drinking too much, showing up to work late, losing focus during jobs. Uncle Mike tried to talk to me about it, but I wasn't hearing it. Customers started going elsewhere. My savings for the shop drained fast between lost work and trying to drink away memories of Sarah. I lost 3 more big jobs in 2 weeks. Word gets around fast in the luxury car world. 1 mistake and your reputation takes a hit. 2 mistakes, people start looking elsewhere. Uncle Mike tried to help. He's a good dude. Kept giving me chances even when I was showing up late, hungover, or both. But after I scratched a client's restored 1969 Camaro because I was too drunk to notice a loose wrench on my workbench, he had to make a decision. He pulled me aside one Friday afternoon, paint all over his face. "Listen, kid. I love you like a son, but I can't let you work on cars like this. You're going to hurt yourself or someone else. Take some time. Get your head straight." That night, I drank until I couldn't feel feelings anymore. I woke up on my bathroom floor to 3 missed calls from my landlord. Turns out I'd missed 2 months of rent on my apartment above the shop. I'd been so messed up, I didn't even notice the late notices piling up. The real kick in the teeth, my savings account was almost empty. For years of carefully saving every penny for my dream shop, gone in less than 2 months of self-destruction between the botched jobs I had. To make right, the drinking and trying to keep up appearances on the few dates I went on like that was going to help. I'd burned through almost everything. I had to move back in with my mom at 26. She didn't say anything when I showed up at her door with 2 duffel bags and a box of tools. Just hugged me and said dinner would be ready in an hour. But I saw her crying in the kitchen later that night. That destroyed me knowing I was making my mom cry after everything she'd sacrificed to raise me right. I started taking any job I could find. Worked at AutoZone during the day. Delivered pizzas at night. But the worst, I had to take a job as a valet at this fancy steakhouse downtown. The same kind of place I used to dream about taking Sarah to once I made it. Then it happened. The moment that really broke me. I'm standing there in my valet uniform, cheap polyester pants and a red vest that made me look like a rejected Christmas elf. When up pulls this familiar Porsche GT3 RS, that specific shade of shark blue that still haunts my dreams, out steps James, looking like a GQ model. And then Sarah, wearing this red dress that probably cost more than my car designer everything. That tennis bracelet James had posted about giving her on Instagram. Yeah, I was still pathetically checking their socials. She saw me. I know she saw me, but she looked right through me like I was invisible. Just handed me her clutch with this practiced smile you give to the help. James, though, actually recognized me. He gets this little smirk on his face, pulls out his wallet. "Take good care of it," he says, handing me a $100 bill. "I know how rough things have been for you lately." I wanted to shove that bill down his throat. Wanted to tell him that I'd forgotten more about cars than he'd ever know. Wanted to point out that daddy's money doesn't make you a man. But you know what I did? I took the money because I needed it. Because my mom's AC was broken and she wouldn't let me pay to fix it. But I knew that 100 would cover the parts one needed. That night after my shift, I sat in my car. The same Mustang I'd been so proud of building up from nothing, now showing its age and neglect. I pulled out my phone, looked at Sarah's Instagram. There they were at the same restaurant I just validated at. Perfect couple, perfect life, perfect everything. 30 pounds of depression weighed on my frame. Cheap uniform reeking of other people's cars. That $100 bill burning a hole in my pocket. That was my rock bottom. But here's the thing about hitting bottom. Once you're there, you've got nothing left to lose. I drove home that night, walked straight past my mom watching her late-night shows into my old bedroom that still had my high school trophies on the wall. I stood there looking in the mirror for what felt like hours. The guy looking back, I didn't recognize him anymore. Hadn't shaved in weeks. Dark circles under my eyes. Looked like a stranger wearing my face. That's when I made the decision. The decision capital T, capital D, because sometimes you have to completely break before you can rebuild. And rebuild, that's exactly what I was about to do. That $100 bill James gave me, it changed everything, but not in the way he intended. The morning after the valet incident, I woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning. Something inside me was different. I walked to my bathroom, grabbed my mom's old digital scale, and faced the music. 242 pounds. I'd put on 47 pounds of pure depression weight in just a few months. I pulled out my phone, deleted every delivery app, unfollowed Sarah and James on everything, and downloaded a calorie tracking app instead. Then I did something I hadn't done since high school football. I put on my old running shoes and went for a run. I made it exactly 6 minutes before I thought my lungs would explode. But here's the thing about rock bottom. You've got nothing but time. No girlfriend, no social life to maintain, no reputation to protect anymore. Just hours and hours to rebuild yourself. So, I made a plan, a real one, not some New Year's resolution type deal. 4:30 in the morning, wake up, protein shake, learned about proper nutrition from YouTube. 5 o'clock in the morning, gym. 7 o'clock in the morning, AutoZone shift. 4 o'clock in the afternoon, valet job. 11 o'clock at night, study business and marketing until I couldn't keep my eyes open. Rinse and repeat every single day. The first month was hell. My body hurt constantly. Living with my mom at 26 felt like the ultimate failure. The valet job was a constant reminder of everything I'd lost. But I kept looking at that $100 bill on my wall. Kept thinking about James' smirk. Use that anger, that humiliation as fuel. By month 3, things started changing. I was down 25 pounds, started seeing muscle definition again. The regular customers at AutoZone began asking what I was doing differently. But the biggest change was happening in my mind. See, working at AutoZone had this unexpected benefit. I got to talk to every kind of car guy in Detroit. From suburban dads working on their weekend projects to serious collectors maintaining their classics. I started noticing patterns in what they complained about, what services they couldn't find, what they wished existed. The high-end guys especially kept bitching about how the dealerships like James Family's chain were overcharging for basic work and screwing up the complex stuff. The more I listened, the more I saw a gap in the market. These guys wanted someone who understood both the mechanics and the luxury market. Remember that warehouse I mentioned earlier? I found it during a valet shift. This massive abandoned building in Corktown, right between the wealthy suburbs and downtown. The previous owner went bankrupt during CO. The place was a mess. Broken windows, graffiti everywhere, probably some questionable residents in the corners. But holy hell, the bones were perfect. High ceilings, great location, massive doors that could fit any size vehicle. During my breaks, I'd sit in my car outside that building running numbers, sketching layouts, planning. The asking price was way out of my league. $400,000. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. Then came the breakthrough. One night, I'm validating and this beat-up Rolls-Royce Phantom rolls in. Yeah, that's a thing. The owner, this old-school Detroit businessman, Mr. Thompson, says the car is making this weird noise. He's complained to 3 different dealerships, spent thousands, and the problem's still there. I hear it and immediately know what it is. A classic air suspension issue these models have. I tell him my diagnosis. He's skeptical but desperate. Says I can look at it after my shift if I want. I spent 2 hours in that parking lot fixing his car with basic tools from my trunk. When I finish, he's shocked. He starts asking about my background, my plans. I told him everything about the warehouse I wanted to buy, about my vision for a different kind of luxury garage, about how the current market was underserving guys like him. We must have talked for another hour. The next day, he calls, wants to meet at his office. I show up in my best clothes, which wasn't saying much at that point, hands still stained with motor oil despite scrubbing them raw. He has a proposal. He'll help secure the loan for the warehouse, plus $200,000 for renovations and equipment. In return, he wants 25% of the business and first priority service for his car collection. But here's the catch. I had 3 months to prove I could run a business. I had to create a complete business plan, marketing strategy, everything. Oh, and I had to get back in good standing with the luxury car community. No pressure, right? You know what I did? I grabbed every free business course online I could find. I spent my valet shift studying the high-end clients, how they talked, what they valued, what made them trust a business. I used my AutoZone connections to start rebuilding my reputation in the car community. Called in favors from every mechanic I'd ever helped. I lost another 20 pounds. Started dressing better. Not fancy, but professional, clean, pressed clothes, even for the valet job. I changed how I talked, how I carried myself. Not pretending to be something I wasn't, but becoming the best version of who I could be. 3 months later, I walked into Mr. Thompson's office a different man. Physically, mentally, professionally, everything had changed. I slapped down a 100-page business plan that I'd rewritten 12 times. I had 5 luxury car owners ready to sign maintenance contracts. Had a complete renovation plan for the warehouse. He read through everything, looked at me for a long moment, then opened his desk drawer and pulled out a set of keys. The keys to the warehouse. He'd already bought it. He said he knew after week 2 that I was going to make it happen. Just wanted to see how far I'd push myself. That night, standing in my soon-to-be shop, covered in dust and cobwebs, I finally took that $100 bill down from my wall. Not because I was over it, but because I needed room for the building permit that was going to change everything. Renovating that warehouse was like bringing a dead car back to life. You've got to strip everything down to bare metal before you can rebuild it properly. The first day I walked in as the owner, I found 3 homeless guys living in the corner office and enough pigeons to start a racing team. The roof leaked in 17 different places. The concrete floor was cracked worse than my ex's moral compass. But man, there's something therapeutic about destroying things to rebuild them better. I spent 2 weeks just demolishing interior walls and clearing out decades of industrial crap. Mr. Thompson thought I was crazy for doing the demo work myself. But I needed this. Needed to feel every piece of this place transform under my hands. Remember that business plan I mentioned? It called for 3 months of renovation before opening. We did it in 7 weeks. I'm talking 18-hour days, sleeping on a cot in what would become the customer lounge, eating nothing but protein bars and gas station coffee. My mom would bring me clean clothes and actual food, telling me I was working too hard. But she didn't understand this wasn't work. This was redemption. The floor ended up costing almost $50,000 to do right. Special epoxy coating that could handle everything from oil spills to Bugatti tire marks. The lifts, another $100,000 for the good stuff. None of that cheap hydraulic nonsense that breaks down every other month. Every dollar spent was an investment in proving them wrong. Opening day was nothing fancy. No big ceremony. No ribbon cutting. I just opened the doors at 7 o'clock in the morning on a Tuesday. I had exactly 5 appointments scheduled. All Mr. Thompson's connections. By 8 o'clock in the morning, I had my first real test. A Rolls-Royce Cullinan rolls in. The owner complaining about a weird noise in the suspension. Other shops had quoted him $115,000 for a complete system replacement. It took me 2 hours to diagnose and fix a loose actuator that cost $300 in parts. The look on his face when I handed him the bill, priceless. He called 3 friends before he even left the parking lot. That's when things started moving. Word spread through the luxury car community like wildfire. This new shop in Corktown, the guy who runs it actually knows what he's doing. Doesn't rip you off. Fair prices for quality work. By week 3, we were booked solid. 2 weeks out, I hired my first 2 mechanics, both guys I knew from my Uncle Mike's shop days, who'd been wanting to get into high-end work. I trained them myself, made sure they understood my standards. No cutting corners, no overcharging just because the client has money. Then came the game changer. Remember that Ferrari restoration I mentioned way back? The owner was this big shot in the classic car world. He brings in his 1962 Ferrari 250 GTE. The previous shop had totally botched the engine rebuild. Wanted another $40,000 to fix their mistakes. I spent a week rebuilding that engine myself, staying up till 3 o'clock in the morning studying original Ferrari manuals. When I fired it up for the first time, that V12 singing like it just rolled out of Maranello. Man, I actually cried. The owner was so happy he featured us in his car club newsletter. Next thing you know, we're getting calls from collectors across the country. 6 months in, I had to hire 3 more mechanics. We built a reputation for being the shop that could fix the impossible problems, the ones other shops, including certain dealership chains, couldn't figure out. I started getting calls from exotic car owners tired of dealing with dealerships. Here's where it gets good. I started noticing a pattern. A lot of complaints about Morrison Luxury Automobiles, James Daddy's chain. Their service department was slipping, charging crazy prices for basic work, messing up complex jobs. Why? Because James had convinced his old man to cut costs on technician training, figuring rich people would pay whatever they charged anyway. 1 year in, we had a 3-month waiting list. I had to start turning down regular cars to focus on exotics and classics. I expanded to the building next door, doubled our workspace, installed a specialized Ferrari diagnostic system that cost more than my first house would have. Then one day, this familiar Porsche GT3 RS pulls up outside. Not for service, just parked there while its owner went to the new coffee shop across the street. Shark blue paint looking a little dull now. Brake rotors showing heavy wear. I could tell from the sound it needed a carbon cleaning bad, but the owner hadn't figured out who I was yet. See, I'd stayed pretty low-key. No social media presence, no advertising, all word of mouth. Local business magazines had done some pieces on the shop, but I always declined photos. It wasn't about me. It was about the work. But now watching that Porsche sit there knowing what was coming. Man, karma was about to call in her markers. Remember that tired-looking Porsche GT3 RS I mentioned? 2 weeks after I saw it outside my shop, it finally showed up as a customer, not with James driving. He'd sent one of his dealership's porters. Apparently, the car was running rough and their texts couldn't figure out why. The porter handed me the keys without having any idea who I was. I did a full inspection while the porter waited. The car was a mess. Carbon buildup, worn brake pads, transmission fluid that probably hadn't been changed since it left the factory. Classic signs of an owner who cares more about the badge than the machine. I wrote up a full estimate and handed it to the porter. The total came to about $18,000 worth of work needed. The porter called James right there in my office. I could hear James through the phone. That's ridiculous. Our service department said it just needs a tune-up. Made my day when the porter replied, "Sir, you told me to take it to the best shop in Detroit. This is that shop." James shows up an hour later, probably expecting to throw his weight around. He walks into my office without recognizing me at first. I'd changed a lot in 3 years, gained 30 pounds of muscle, grew a well-maintained beard, wearing a tailored suit instead of mechanic's overalls. The moment of recognition, pure gold. His face went through about 5 different emotions in 3 seconds. Shock, disbelief, anger, fear, and finally respect because he knew. One look around my shop told him everything he needed to know. 6 high-end cars being worked on, 3 Ferrari certificates on the wall, and a waiting list so long we had to stop taking new clients. How? He started to ask. Hard work. I cut him off. Something Daddy's money can't buy. He tried to save face. Started talking about how we should collaborate. His dealership chain was struggling. Turns out cutting corners on service wasn't such a great long-term strategy. But I wasn't interested in helping the guy who took everything from me. Your car will be ready in 2 weeks, I told him. Standard payment terms 50% upfront. The best part, he paid. He had no choice really. His reputation was on the line and his dealership couldn't fix the car properly. But that was just the appetizer. The main course came about a month later when I got an interesting email. Morrison Luxury Automobiles was looking to sell some of their locations. Turns out their service department's reputation had tanked so bad they were losing millions. High-end clients were leaving in droves, many of them coming to us. Remember Mr. Thompson, my mentor and investor? Turns out he sits on the board of several banks. Banks that held the Morrison family's business loans. One phone call from him and suddenly those loans were being reviewed closely. The real cherry on top. Sarah showed up at my shop unannounced one afternoon. She looked different. The designer clothes were gone, replaced by regular retail stuff. That perfect rich girl polish had faded. Turns out James' family's financial troubles had hit home. No more unlimited credit cards. No more luxury shopping sprees. I made a mistake, she said, standing in my office, the same office where I'd once dreamed of building something great. I never should have left. You were the real thing, and I was too blind to see it. Just then, Emma walked in. My girlfriend of 2 years, a former professional race car driver who now runs her own performance parts manufacturing company. She's everything Sarah pretended to be. Smart, driven, genuine. The look on Sarah's face when Emma kissed me hello. Better than any revenge I could have planned. The mistake wasn't leaving. I told Sarah. The mistake was thinking I needed you to succeed. Today, my shop is the go-to place for exotic cars in the Midwest. We've got a 6-month waiting list, 3 locations, and a reputation for excellence that money can't buy. James' family had to sell most of their dealerships. Karma's when you build your success on sand. Last I heard, he's working as a used car salesman in Ohio. Sarah, she's still with him, but not by choice. Turns out when you build your whole life around someone else's money, it's hard to walk away when that money disappears. Her Instagram these days is all blessed with what matters posts. You know, the kind people make when they're trying to convince themselves they're happy. Me, I just signed a deal to open 2 more locations. Emma and I are getting married next spring, having the ceremony in the first warehouse I renovated. Mr. Thompson's going to be my best man, that $100 bill James gave me when I was a valet. It's framed in my office right next to last year's Entrepreneur of the Year award. Sometimes I think about that night as a valet, watching them walk into that restaurant like they own the world. Everything I've built since then, it's not about revenge. It's about proving that real success comes from genuine passion, hard work, and never letting someone else define your worth. The empire I built, it's not built on family connections or trust funds. It's built on stripped knuckles, late nights, and a genuine love for what I do. And that's something no one can ever take.